With us tonight, a former breakout session speaker from the 2019 Maine Women's Conference, Lanette Pottle. And for those of you who have not met Lanette yet, let me tell you a little bit about her. She's a life and business strategist who supports ambitious yet exhausted women who want to take their service-based business to the next level without working crazy hours. Her zone of genius, and you'll understand why we asked her to do this for us, is helping clients learn to focus on the right things at the right time. How many, with a show of hands, have had a hard time focusing on the right things at the right time recently? Or in just brief moments like, oh, I can't get myself together. And she does this so they can make more money and still have plenty of guilt-free breathing room to enjoy their life. So Lanette, thank you for joining us. And for those of you who don't know me, I am Jodi Flynn. I am the president of the board for the Maine Women's Conference. I am also the owner of Women Taking the Lead. I do executive leadership coaching. And we thought, you know, as a way to support everyone in the community and continue to provide value, to continue to connect, educate, inspire all of us to take on new and expanded roles in our communities, our workplaces, our lives, that we would bring Lanette on to help us, because I don't know about you, but the transition to being stay at home, and it felt like all of a sudden was very jarring. Right? And so we've all been absorbing that right now. And guess what? Now we're starting to talk about some of those restrictions being lifted, but we still don't even know what that's going to look like yet. So even though it really hasn't happened yet, it's a little intimidating. It's a little scary. It does feel a little jarring. Probably some of you are like, I'm so done with this and ready to move on. But at the same time, there's this like, well, what's that going to look like? And that's very stressful. So Lanette, I really want to, you and I are having a conversation, but I really want this to be a platform for you, because you are, you know, really an expert in this realm. And so just so we can get an idea of how you're dealing with all of this, all of the rapid changes that we've been going through, how have you been processing it?
Yeah, great question, right? And thanks for inviting me to be here. I'm super excited to be here. And it's really interesting because sometimes the perception is, if you are a coach or you're in this realm, that like you have your stuff all together and you don't have any challenges that come up, which just like, right, if you had a mouthful of water, you'd spit it out, because it couldn't be further from the truth. However, what we do have, and what I do have as a coach, is a bag of tricks that I can dig into. And one of the things that's been really helpful for me is going back to something that I work with my clients on, and we talk about the spiral staircase, right? And so just like everyone here, I'm sure, is on a personal development journey of some level. As we go through life, we go up a level, we're going on that staircase, and it feels really good, and we're moving up, and then we kind of come to that corner before we go to the next level, and it's dark and it's scary and we don't know what's coming next. And as each level we go up, these feelings start to show up again. Like, this feels familiar, it's different scenery, but it feels familiar. And as I thought about just the spiral staircase, I was having this underlying feeling, you know, right? It feels a little like deja vu, and you could chalk that up to the Groundhog's Day effect of just every day seems the same in quarantine. But it was more than that. And as I dug in, what I was able to recognize is that it was like a past life experience, but not in a woo-woo way. It was another time in my life back in the 90s. And in the early 90s, I was a military wife. My husband at the time, my ex-husband now, but my husband at the time was in the Air Force. And oftentimes what would happen, he was on tour duties often and would never know when he was going to be going, and would never know how long he was going to be gone. And I had two small kids at home. And so there would be a lot of anxiety around like these sudden changes, right? Everything, the dynamic is changing. Then the kids and I would kind of get in a groove. It's unsettling, but you get into a groove. And then it's like the announcement that he's going to be coming home. And you want to be excited, but there's still this, it's disruptive. There was this feeling of like we just found our way. We've got our new routine, our new normal that comes up so often, right? And now it's disruptive. So there's these mixed feelings. So when I was able to tap back into that memory, it's like, this is why it feels so familiar. The global pandemic that we're currently faced with may be unprecedented, but it's not unprecedented that I've had uncertainty in my life. It's not unprecedented that I've worked through challenges in my life. And I think that's really important to remember for all of us. It might not be that you were a military spouse, but there's been something else in your life where you've been dealing with transitions up to this point. And it's that reminder of we can do hard things. It is uneasy right now. And it's like, oh, we want things to open up, but oh, we're still a little uncertain. And what is that? But we're all equipped to deal with this. Even when it's feeling like, oh my God, this is so heavy, I don't even know what I'm going to do next. We can tap back into, and that's what I've been able to do to keep myself sane during this time, and some other challenges that have come up that have nothing to do with the pandemic is really just tapping back into that. So that visual of the spiral staircase and knowing that whatever the transition is, when you start to feel that uneasiness and like, this is different, but it's familiar, just taking the time to dig back into that. And it's like, okay, what's up with this? What is it? And we're able to go back and find evidence for ourselves that yes, we can do hard things. It's different than someone saying everything's going to be okay. We've always made it. We'll make it through. Because when we do that self-examination and we can see the own evidence in our life, it's very empowering. And it helps. It doesn't take away the fact that it's a challenge, but there's some comfort in knowing that I'm equipped to deal with this. Whatever life throws my way, I have the tools to deal with this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what's coming to mind now is we've all probably been in situations where we kind of knew what to expect. Like what's coming to mind right now for me was like the summer before my freshman year in college. Like I kind of had an idea what I was getting myself into, but then I felt like I had no idea what I was getting myself into. And I didn't know what life was going to look like. Like I didn't know what my day-to-day was going to look like and all the changes that were going to happen. But there was that like excitement, but also fear at the same time. And I saw this in one of my nephews a couple of years ago. He was at the same place the summer before his freshman year of college, who like up until that point had always come off very confident, on the verge of cocky. And then that summer I saw him be like uncertain and a little nervous. And that has been resonating for me. Like I'm feeling like I want to be with my family again. I want to gather with my friends. I want to be in the same room with my colleagues. And like, but are we going to have to wear masks? And are we going to have to be 6 feet? Like that, there's that uncertainty going on as well. How do you help your clients kind of deal with these conflicting feelings, you know, going into situations?
Yeah. And it really is about when we can deal with reality, right? It isn't being Pollyanna and sticking your head in the sand and kind of ignoring anything that's going on, but it's also not going to the worst case scenario. It's finding, let's just deal with our current reality. And when we can get grounded and rooted in our current reality, then we can start to take those steps forward. And to know that it's going to probably, for most of us, be baby steps, and that's okay. It doesn't have to be a time of giant leaps. Not to say that can't happen, but to shift our expectations around what's required of us at this time.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because we're go-getters, we're high achievers, right?
Yes, like I love how you said that, like, something big could happen, but take the pressure off that it has to happen. If I see one more meme out there that tells me what William Shakespeare accomplished during his pandemic, and I think there was one about Thomas Edison or something like that, I was just like, back off, like enough. And for those of you who are listening, Lanette and I are having this conversation, but we're going to take questions too. So if you have any questions about anything we're talking about, put them in the chat. Abby is going to monitor the chat and let us know when we have some questions that we can answer. And Lanette, I want to pivot a little bit because I want to talk about goals. We just talked about a lot of us being very ambitious women with, we have big dreams, we have big goals. We were trying to accomplish something. Many, if not all of the women on this call, I will say, was working towards something really big.
Yeah.
And, that got knocked off the rails. When that happens, how do we stay in alignment with our goals? Because our goals are so important to us, right? For me, my goals become a part of my identity. It's what I'm living into, what I'm becoming. And then we're in this situation where it's like, well, you can't do that right now.
Mm-hmm.
How do you guide someone through that process?
Yeah. And it is challenging because back to that, we are go-getters. We've got big visions, big plans, things that we're going to do in the world. And I think the important thing to remember is there might be a plot shift, the timing might change. It doesn't mean you have to give up this dream or these goals. The timing might look different. The path to getting there might be different, but it's not about just saying, I can't do it. Because that's where the mindset piece starts to come in, right? So I think that's the number one thing, is creating this mindset around asking some different questions. Because whatever we're feeding our mind, if we say we can't, our subconscious mind is going to work to find all the reasons we can't do it, mm-hmm. right? And if we're moving into problem solving mode, then we can start to think about things differently. And our subconscious is working for us even when we don't realize it. So that's a big piece of it, is thinking about your goals a little differently. It isn't black and white. It isn't all or nothing. It's how can we look at this a little bit differently? So there's a few things that I would share here, and there's some questions that we could talk about around mindset, and we can talk about goals itself. Do you have a preference of where we start?
Let's start.
Topic.
Yes. I always love starting with mindset and then going to tactical, because if you try to do tactical without aligning the mindset, you tend to find yourself spinning your wheels.
Absolutely. So getting to that mindset shift of just moving from out of, I can't do this, there's no way I can do this, it's a pandemic, people don't do this in this time. I've got 5 questions. And so if you have a pen, you might want to jot these down. And if you don't catch them, I'll put together a little PDF or something with the questions that we can send out afterwards.
Perfect.
They're simple, but they're really profound, because it's subtle shifts. I think I want to really emphasize that it's the little things that truly matter. So shifting the question, the first thing would be keeping in mind that I know that we're high achieving women. We are really wanting to make a difference in the world, and we hold ourselves to such high expectations. The first question I want you to consider when you're feeling this pressure and like, okay, I just can't even do it, I can't think about it, is just to ask yourself, what's the best that I can do in this moment? Right? Not what is the best that I can do this year or this week. It's what is the best that I can do in this moment? Because the truth is, for all of us, whether we're going through transitions or not, our best it's a fluid thing. Mm-hmm. We can believe in excellence, that can be in our value system, but our best is going to look different based on what's going on in our life. Real life example for me, during this pandemic, I mentioned that I've had some other things going on. I had a close family member that was hospitalized, non-COVID related, but still it brought up a lot of challenges and emotions and things that were going on. And so the best that I could do in the early days of this was to communicate by messenger. I couldn't talk on the phone. I just was too welled up with emotion. It was too raw. Mm-hmm. I couldn't talk to people. So I communicated. I did group messages, which I typically hate. They drive me crazy, but that was the best that I could do in the moment. You know, I had some emails that I knew I really needed to respond to, and I prioritized. There were 3 that absolutely needed my attention. And rather go into a big, long explanation, it was just, I want to acknowledge that I owe you a response. I'm dealing with a family emergency, and I will be back with you as soon as I possibly can. That was the best that I could do. And I think to give ourselves permission to know that every day isn't going to be optimal. Every moment isn't going to be. You know, for the woman in the room that is educating her children, running her business full time from her dining room table, has a spouse that may have gotten laid off from their job. I mean, there's so many things, right? It's not, everyone has their own personal experience, but our shared experience is this thing of the expectations we hold for ourselves. And so what is the best that I can do in this moment? I think that's a really important one. So number 2, second question would be, what's another way I can do this? Action-oriented people come up with a plan. We have an action plan. We have to-do list. We know how we're going to get there. But the nature of it, the nature of life is there are going to be times that we have to take detours. There are going to be things that happen, circumstances. Again, whether it's a global crisis or just daily living, these are things we need to be able to adapt to. So what's another way I can do this? And what I do for myself is I am literally asking myself these questions out loud. There's something, and Shauna's in the room. Shauna might be able to tell us more in the comments about the science behind why this works, but your response system is different when you're saying it out loud and you're verbally asking yourself a question. That's why it's so powerful. Does anybody here talk to themselves just generally? Right? Sometimes that's like how you work through an issue or a problem, is talking it out. And so it's the same thing. What's another way I can do this? Like, I'm frustrated. I'm going to shift that. Instead of putting my energy into why I cannot do this, what's another way? Let's go into this brainstorming mode. Ideation. Tap into that piece. So that number 2 question is a really powerful one. Similarly, the third question is, how can I make this work? So there's a lot of things stacked against me, but how can I still make this work? You've seen this happen a whole lot, and this is a great example, this webinar series, right? We can't be right now together for the socials and the things like that, but we can still connect. That's how we can make this work, is we can still find a way to be together. And likewise with our goals, like, what's a different way? How can I make this work? And number 4 is, what am I not seeing? You can see how these kind of stack on each other. Sometimes the solution is right under our nose and we just can't see it because we're not looking. We think that we know the answer. But when we open to possibility, what is it that I'm not seeing? Maybe there's something right in your periphery that's just waiting for you to find it. Mm-hmm. Right? And then number 5, and I know this is probably going to be the toughest one for most of the people in the room, but so important, is, who can I ask to help me? Right?
Yes.
There's so much wrapped up into that, because we want to be able to be self-sufficient. We're strong, independent women. We want to be able to do it ourselves. And it's going back to that place of truly knowing. It comes from a place of strength to be able to say, I need help. Mm-hmm. How can you help me? And we're lifting each other up. right, is shifting out of that thought process of it's selfish for me to ask. Everybody's going through so much right now. It's selfish of me. Well, what if it's selfish not to give someone else that opportunity to help you? What about that possibility? Because there have been times over these last few weeks that has been a string of sanity for me, to take me out of some of the situations that have been very difficult for me. To be able to help somebody else helps me to clear my mind and to gain some perspective as well. And so I'd invite you to think about those 5 questions. Just getting in the right mindset as you are looking ahead to your goals.
Yeah, I love these questions. And when I look at them, I could be wrong, you know, and if anyone disagrees, absolutely put it in the chat. But I think the first 3 we can train ourselves to do, right? We can accept, like, I can't do much more than this, or our bodies or our minds will tell us, this is all you're getting out of me today. This is the highest level of functioning I have to give. And we're pretty good at workarounds, right? If I can't talk with somebody, I'm just going to send a message. Even if I feel bad, that's the way I'm going to do it. I think the hard questions are, what am I not seeing? Because you have to consider that you might not be seeing everything clearly and correctly. And who can I ask to help me? I saw a lot of smiles and a lot of shaking heads on the call, like and this is the thing, when you're an ambitious, go-getting woman, typically you've gotten a lot of success by doing it on your own, by trusting yourself to just work really hard and make it happen. And we Google and we YouTube the heck out of something to try to figure it out, and asking for help can be so difficult. And I quickly saw a comment from Allison that said, well, if you start with number 5, number 4 might be easier. Because it is helpful to have somebody else say, are you seeing this? Right? It's always like, isn't it true? It's harder to solve your own problems because you're too close to them.
Absolutely.
And somebody seeing it from the outside are like, well, did you notice this and this and that? Or they could probably point out other people in your life you could be asking for help too.
Yeah. Just and that's the beauty of working with a coach or a really trusted friend, even, is somebody that can shine a spotlight on the things that you aren't seeing, or to hold up a mirror and really to ask those questions to help you dig deeper. I also wanted to acknowledge that what you were saying about the first 3 questions. I think, yes, that is intellectually, that is something that we work with, but when you mix in a lot of emotion, when you like, for a lot of people, there have been grief emotions that have come up during this time of transition. When you mix in some of those complicated emotions, things that we typically would just work through become more challenging. And so I do want to acknowledge that everyone's situation is a little different. So all of these questions might be tough. None of them might be tough, but I offer them up just as something to add to your toolbox to help you if you're finding that you're on the struggle bus, right?
Yeah, sometimes it's helpful to go through a structured process,
right,
to see yourself out of it, especially if you're overly stressed or in an emotional place, because I'm going to say this very generically, that emotion and logic is like a seesaw, right? If we're highly emotional, our logical brain, stops working. And when we're being highly, highly logical, we can become disconnected from our emotions, and we want to find that balance. And sometimes going through a structured process like centers us and helps us to work through it. And at this point, Lanette, I want to pause for a second before we move on to tactical, just to check in with Abby. I saw Allison's comment, but I have not been reading through. I saw it start to move really quickly all of a sudden. Do you have anything for us, Abby?
No, you're doing great. I think everybody's just enthralled. I'm loving those questions. So
okay, so
maybe open it up to the floor and see if anybody does have a question. If you'd like to speak up, you'll just have to, up in your upper right hand corner or in the lower part of your screen, depending on what device you're on, unmute yourself or raise your hand and I'll unmute you and ask a question if you have one. Let's give you a few seconds to think here.
I just saw your comment. Struggle bus. Yes.
The struggle bus. I'm totally using that. And I won't forget that when I'm on the struggle bus, I need to roll down the window or like pull down the window and go, hey, help me in here.
I love that visual, Abby.
Yeah, that's me in the struggle bus.
Yeah, I often tell my clients where we get to a part of the process in my coaching system where I say, okay, this week you need to ask 2 people for help. And it doesn't matter what you're asking for help on. It doesn't have to be work related or business related. And I said, and as a bonus, if somebody offers to help, you can't refuse help.
Yeah.
Unless they're a creeper, right? In which case, say no. But if it's a friend, family member, colleague, a person you trust, and they say, hey, can I help you with that? The answer is yes. And figure out a way to let them help you. Okay. All right, Lanette, we've covered mindset to get to that place where we're more open to opportunity and solutions and all of that, and seeking help, like getting yourself into a state where you can see new possibilities and reach out to the people in your life to support you. What are some of the tactical things we can do in this process?
Yeah. So the biggest thing I really alluded to a little bit earlier, and it's this premise of the value of small steps, right? It's easy to discount the little things. It's like, that really doesn't amount to anything. So what I'm a huge advocate of actually is small steps, but not just small steps, it's consistency as well, right? So it's that combination. And to know that those micro actions, it might take longer than what you initially expected. It may not, but it could. But to know and to feel grounded and feel positive about ourselves is that no matter what the challenges of the transition, we might be moving a little more slowly, but we're still going. Like, we're not down for the count. We are still going. We are still making that forward progress. And so taking those big goals and starting to assess a little bit and think through, and maybe this is doing it with a partner or a coach, right? To start to break down those bigger goals. What are the pieces that I still can do? There might be some things. I know, Jodi, we were talking the other day about some of the things you were going to be recording your book on audio, and the studio is not open. Okay, well, there's not really much of a workaround for that, but there are other things that you're working on, right?
Yes.
So everybody, I'm sure, has those kinds of situations because we're working on more than one thing, or at least our big vision includes more than one goal. And so where is it that we can break that down into bite-sized pieces? And then the big piece here, right? You're doing those small micro actions consistently day after day. And it's taking time to celebrate. This is one of those things that I typically get as much resistance as the asking for help. Because it's like, that's frivolous. There's nothing to celebrate. I'm not done. I'm not done. The truth of the matter is, even when we're done, we're on to the next thing. So we're not training ourselves to celebrate our successes. Again, going back to the brain science of releasing these feel-good chemicals is when we're taking time to pause and celebrate, and we have that, rush of dopamine and these feel-good chemicals, that's training us to like, oh, I want to do more of that. Okay, maybe it was just this little thing that took me 10 minutes to do today, but you know what? I did it. I'm going to celebrate that. And it doesn't mean breaking out champagne, but what is it? It could be a literal happy dance. It could be taking a break and going outside. It's micro steps, micro celebrations. So remembering to reward yourself and recognize yourself for what it is that you are doing.
I love that, Lanette. There were a couple of things that came to mind as you were saying this next piece was the micro goals. I love that. And yeah, I'm a big believer in micro goals. I think I'll probably botch this, but the saying that we overestimate what we can get done in a day and underestimate what we can get done in a year.
Yes.
right? We can accomplish so much by doing a little bit every day. And if you you live like me, it's not about what got done on the to-do list, it's what was left on the to-do list that I focus on. And
Yep.
so instead of celebrating, it's a punishment. Oh, now I got to move these items over till tomorrow. And now I've overloaded tomorrow. There's no way I'm going to win the day tomorrow because I've overloaded it, right? So I like this, like, scale it down, focus on little things. And I even had a client say to me, this was years ago, she declared, she's like, I tripled my business in 3 months. And I was like, holy smokes, how did you do that? She said, I did one thing every single day that moved my business forward. Like, and I remember this when I was starting my business, that the tone out there and the message was massive action, hustle, push yourself, work into the night, do what other people are unwilling to do so you can have what other people will want later, blah, 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 blah. Right? It was all the hustle mentality. And for a lot of us, we found ourselves burnt out, right? And exhausted from that. But I love this idea of, like, have these micro goals that you can do, just move you forward a little bit, and then have those micro celebrations to keep up the momentum, right? To feel good about it. Don't wait for the end of the day when you're looking at stuff that still needs to get done. Throughout the day, be celebrating in whatever way feels good for you to keep that momentum going.
Exactly.
I put a little question in the chat box too and asked people to write in how they like to celebrate.
I love that.
Yes, I see ginger champagne sounds good.
We've got a little bit of, one of the pain points Shauna says is that oftentimes her celebration is social time and she doesn't really get to have that as much as she has been. So, you know, coffee dates are replaced by virtual dates, which I totally agree. It's just not the same. I'm like a hugger and a toucher and a squeezer. And to not be able to do that is just torturous, right?
Yes.
Massage, a stop at the little town beach for 5 minutes for some micro celebrating, champagne, creative time, signing on to this webinar and taking some time. Awesome. That's a great way to celebrate. Asking some questions at the end of the day or week, something that you did that you're proud of. Oh, Lisa as well. So lots of good ideas in there for the celebration.
And I've got a couple of, because sometimes, because this isn't the norm, it becomes more challenging to think about. And it's like building any new habit. It takes time. It's not going to happen just magically. It takes intentional thought. So there are a couple of things that are fun that have been helpful. One is having a celebration jar. And so it's setting aside a time where you're giving conscious thought to what are some of those ideas that could be micro celebrations. So you don't have to think about it. When it's time to do a micro celebration, you can reach in the jar and pull out a slip and see what it says. And the interesting thing is if you don't feel like doing what's on the slip, you automatically think of something you'd rather be doing. Right? By default. So it's a win-win any way you look at it. So having that celebration jar is a fun activity to start to train yourself to do that. And then another idea, which is not my idea, I heard it a couple of years ago and actually heard it again today. And it was like, oh, I'm definitely going to mention that tonight. And it's having a ta-da list, right? We're always talking about the to-do list. And so having the ta-da, like, ta-da, this is what I did today. And you're recording those things. It could be a journal entry. It could be something, but it's that in itself can be a celebration, that you're taking time to acknowledge the things that you did accomplish. Because typically we're accomplishing more than we think we are.
Absolutely. And so I guess my next question would lead more towards, okay, time structure and commitments, right? We're all having these crazy schedules and, and for some of us might be, depending on how our roles and responsibilities have shifted, may have found ourselves busier than ever. I find it interesting. And I even just did a recording for my podcast and, I even said, something along the lines of, you may have more free time, but I know a lot of people who the stay at home, they're busier than they've ever been.
Absolutely.
When they could go out and do certain things. So, you know, so we're trying to like be open, work on micro goals, do celebrations. Do you have any tips on how to structure our time and our commitments so that we're not getting overwhelmed with all of it?
Yeah, so there's a couple of things I want to mention, and one is for in the moment and one is for the future. And so in the moment, I think it's really important to remember that even though we're staying at home and we are in many cases isolated from the outside world, it doesn't mean that we don't continue to have boundaries. That's where things get a little hairy, right? We're like, the world has changed, so we just let go of the boundaries that we've set. And we're still creating the expectation. How people treat us is what we allow, right? So if you ever feel like people are taking advantage of your time, it's really time to hold up the mirror and to think about, how are you allowing people to do that? Where did you let your boundaries slip? Right? So thinking about boundaries is really important. That can be anything from, oh gosh, just off the top of my head. So thinking from a business standpoint, you have an appointment with someone, you're meeting on a Zoom, and you put time into preparing and they just don't show up. I don't know if anybody's had things like this happen before. So you're still using a lot of energy, people don't show up, and then you allow that to happen. It becomes a pattern. People don't value your time, and we are putting our energy into being upset with that individual instead of correcting the boundary. And it's like, that's just not going to be okay. It's just not going to be okay. And going forward, this is the expectation. And if you don't meet that expectation, this is the consequence, right? So I think it's really important to remember to set and hold our boundaries, even in these crazy times and in any time of transition. Boundaries are super, super important.
I love that you're bringing that up, Lanette. I actually just had a conversation about this today and quickly want to like go over like, so in, there's all different ways that we can respond to stress. And for a lot of us, we are really good at coping and tolerating and putting up with things. And we say things like, that's okay, it's fine, don't worry about it, no problem, it's no big deal, right? If you're saying these things, you're using that strategy as a way to deal with the stress of something not working. Like somebody not showing up or showing up late when you raced around, like slid into home to make this meeting on time and then sweating, panting, you know, but you're there and you're waiting 5-10 minutes for the other person to show up. That doesn't work. Like that's a problem. But most of us don't want to make a big deal about these things. So we go into that. It's okay. It's fine. No big deal. Don't worry about it. Blah, 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 blah. What we're finding right now is because of the uncertainty, because of the changes in our schedules and our lifestyles, we are depleted. We don't have the same energy to put up with things that were easier to put up with before. This is one of those special gifts that the pandemic is giving us. And I positioned it this way to my client. You don't have the energy to put up with this stuff. So you're gonna have to address it.
Mm-hmm.
It's a beautiful gift to get really annoyed and frustrated. Now you want to manage yourself before you have that conversation. You don't want to go into it annoyed, right, frustrated, resentful, that sort of thing. You want to get to a calm place, but then have those conversations of like, if you're running late, please let me know. If you're not going to be able to make the meeting, I need to know this far in advance. Mm-hmm. You know, and there are some people that you just cut off, like they're always not showing up for the meeting. So, you know, 2 strikes, you're done, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. But boundaries are so important and make such a huge difference in lifestyle. Did you want to add anything to that, Lanette?
No, I was just going to say it's both personal and professional, right? It's on both levels. And sometimes one can be easier to deal with than the other. Right. So kind of reflecting on that yourself and see, is there one place that you're really good about keeping boundaries, but other places, maybe it's an individual, maybe it's a family member where you find yourself just always giving in, letting their priorities trump yours, right? Those are the places that we're most uncomfortable with, we probably least want to deal with because there's some perception of conflict. But if we can use our energy to address those things, it's gonna make us feel so much better. And it's going to free up time, emotional energy, all of those things.
Yeah. And we talked about confidence boosters and energy boosters before. For some of us, having that conversation, we're like, oh, you know, that sort of thing. But when you have conversations where you're standing up for yourself, right? And you're respecting yourself by having this conversation and owning that your time is valuable too, or your energy, your resources are also important. On the other side of that, it's such a confidence booster.
Absolutely.
You know, that you held, like, either created the boundary for the first time or you protected the boundary with somebody.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that is a biggie. And then the other thing that I want to mention was kind of future-based, but really important to be thinking about in the presence. And I can go back to what Shauna was saying around, like, social time was her reward, and Abby, like, she's a hugger, like I am too. There's that, we miss that. So right now, I don't know about anybody else, but I'm getting lots of invitations in anticipation that things will open up. So I'm getting a lot of requests for the fall in my professional life. And everything sounds so good right now, right? Because it's like, yes, the energy of being with people. And this isn't just for extroverts. I can say 3/4 of my clients are introverts. And they are even saying, you know, it's different choosing to be home and self-isolating. And maybe my world hasn't changed a whole lot because I wasn't socializing a ton. But when someone says I can't do it, then I want to do it all that much more, right? So it doesn't matter where you are on that introvert extrovert scale. It's like everything sounds so good. So it's really important to use that filter. And for anybody that was at my breakout session at the women's conference in the fall, it's going back and using that filter of thinking about alignment. Is this going to be in alignment with kind of that big picture, my big vision, but also my short-term goals, like the goals that I have in this next little bit. Typically, I'd say through the end of the year. Kind of right now, it's a month-to-month thing. And I'm choosing not to make a lot of commitments for the fall. If it's a hell yes, if there's something that under any circumstances I would have been saying yes to, I'm still saying yes. But everything else, I'm hitting the pause button on because I want to maintain space for those really good opportunities that feel they resonate with me. They're in total alignment with my vision, values, goals, all of those things. And I don't want to be reactionary and just say, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this and this and this. And then right now we have that time and we're thinking we're going to have all the time in the world because for those of us that do have some extra time right now, but that's going to go away. And we're going to get to that place and we're going to think, what the heck was I thinking? Right? And we're setting ourselves up we're just passing the pain point down the line.
Great.
So
Yeah.
giving that some thought now.
We have one question from Yvonne that I want to make sure we get to.
Oh yeah, sure.
Yes.
It seems like how we view our approach to gratitude is an interesting question at a time of uncertainty and challenge. How do you see a new fit for this piece? So how does gratitude?
Yeah, gratitude is so huge, and you're hearing it talked about in conversations a lot more because it kind of goes back to some of those questions, the 5 questions that we talked about, because when we go on, I like to think of gratitude as like this scavenger hunt. And so if you go through your day and what you're looking for is things to be grateful for, it shifts your energy, number 1. And number 2, it's you find the things that you're looking for. If you're looking for things to confirm, to create evidence that this sucks, there's nothing going on that's good, you're going to find lots of evidence of that. But if you have this mindset of I'm going to go on a scavenger hunt and find, like, I know there's good out there, and what is the good going to be? And gratitude, again, is one of those things. It isn't always going to be like a fairy dust kind of gratitude. Sometimes it's finding gratitude for being able to be with your family member in the emergency room in a time when that's typically not possible, right? It can be things. It could be a new opportunity, you know, holding gratitude to be able to be here with all of you tonight. I'm very grateful for that. But it's thinking of gratitude as making it your mission to put your subconscious, to put your mind towards, like, that heat-seeking missile, right? We're looking for that. That's specifically the thing we're looking for. And I would challenge you to put that into practice and start journaling on that. And even if it's only 3 things a day, making that, and you are hearing, this has always been the case, but I know in the circles that I'm in and where the places that I'm learning from, it certainly has taken an elevated platform, because gratitude is also a really good tool in our coping mechanism. It helps to paint a clearer picture of reality. Yes, there's some tough things that are going on, and simultaneously there's good in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yes. I think, Lanette, and let me know what you think about this. Like, with gratitude, it depends on where you're starting from too. Like, if you are just feeling like a black cloud is hanging over your head, you're feeling very Eeyore-ish, you know, you're not going to instantly go to, I'm grateful for the flowers, and I'm grateful for this, you know, my friends, and I'm thankful for, you know, Tinkerbell and all of this stuff. You're not going to go there right away. Like, if you're really in a dark place, it might start with, and a friend gave me this years ago, was, I am safe.
Mm-hmm.
I am warm. I am loved. Right? Very grounded.
Mm-hmm.
And as you start to lift it up a little bit. And then I've also found myself in places where I was high energy, and I was very like, oh my God, I love the flowers, and the grass is so green, and they're all different colors. But if you're not there, don't force yourself to be there, because it won't help you to try to make that leap. Like, start where you are and think about very tangible things that are good in your life.
Yeah. And I think that's true of anything, right? Start where you are. That's the key to everything, is just being honest with yourself where you are. And if you're feeling really blue, if you're feeling really overcome, it's like, I'm thankful for this breath, right? It could be as simple as that, but it is a practice of training your brain to look for something beyond the external hardships, the external pressures, the external things that are pulling us, that feel heavy to us.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know I'm seeing we've got about 8 minutes left, and I keep getting drawn back to, Shauna, my heart is going out to you with the whole, like, I get charged by being with people. And, you know, what came to mind was like, oh, can you get together with a friend and have coffee and walk together 6 feet apart? You know, are there different things? So I'm actually going to hive mind this group, and I would love everyone to share something in the comments, something you've done during the pandemic to help you stay in contact and close with the people that you love in your life. You know, it may be that you found workarounds for getting together with them in personal, in which case definitely put it in the chats, but maybe you found ways to stay connected with people that made you feel good, you know, that was rejuvenating for you. And then we can collect those ideas straight from the chat. And also, and Lanette, just to let you know too, I'm giving you this time too to think about, is there anything else I want to impart on this group before we leave? But for those of you who are here, if you have any questions for Lanette, you know, this is the final chance to get them in the chat, get your questions answered. Sky's the limit. You can ask a question about anything, really. We're here to serve.
We do actually have one question to start you off from the lovely Lisa. She says, I set my personal views and goals at the beginning of this year. Would you suggest that we visit our values and personal goals because they might have changed? Not all are business goals.
Great question.
Yeah, that is a great question. I think typically our values are probably, they probably haven't shifted. It never hurts to revisit that, certainly, but with our goals, yes, because what are some things, maybe there have been some legitimate things that have shifted that will put the pause button on that goal for, maybe it's not something that will happen in 2020. I have a friend who was accepted to give her TEDx talk, and she'd been pitching for a while, and that came up, and the TED talk was canceled, right? So, and that's been a long held goal. It's not a possible reality this year. So shifting the focus to what is something. One of the things that just in goal setting generally that I recommend, whether it's a time of transition or not, is doing that like monthly just check-in to make sure, am I still on course? Did I learn something in the process of getting to this goal that maybe now I know I need to shift it a little? Maybe what I thought I wanted isn't exactly what I wanted. So to be able to just do that check-in, I think is good at any time, but certainly during a time of transition.
Yes, I agree. I definitely have had that experience and have clients talked about that too, that with just the changes and the shifting with everything going on, they realized a goal that they had wasn't actually a goal that they really wanted. And you mentioned earlier, I had the goal of getting my book into Audible, and the marketing and all of that stuff just kind of like got pushed off. So I took a goal that I was going to do later and moved it up, because it was something that I could work on right now. So I love that question. I think it's always, you know, especially we're almost 6 months into the year, this is a good time to reevaluate your goals and your progress and see how you're doing at this point. Okay.
Absolutely.
Any other questions, Abby?
No, but we have some amazing ideas.
Yay.
And my thought is that we should combine these. We'll definitely send them back out to people. But I really love the idea of sharing this on our public social media, maybe a little list on the webpage with the recording, so that everybody has some ideas about some things they can do, including the ta-da list, which a lot of people really like.
Yes. I love the ta-da list too.
Journaling, I think those are really great ideas.
Keep those ideas coming. Absolutely. And Lanette, were there any final thoughts, any parting wisdom you want to give to everyone?
Any parting wisdom? Well, I did want to take a quick, we covered a lot. So I did just wanted like the 5 key takeaways that I hope that everybody's taken. I just wanted to go through that super quick.
Perfect.
And number 1 is you can do hard things. Remembering, right? Look at the evidence. You've created evidence all of your life up to this point. You can do hard things. Number 2 is what you tell yourself matters. What is that self-talk? You know, going to those questions instead of going in the downward spiral, have conversations that lift you up instead of pull you down. So what you tell yourself matters. Use the reframing questions to move you into solution mode, right? Don't get anchored into the problem. Lift yourself up into solution mode. Small, consistent steps do deliver results. And lastly is, before you're making a lot of commitments, make sure you're using that filter of your vision, your goals, and your priorities. So those would be the 5 big takeaways that I hope everyone's taking. And just to wrap it up with a bow, in keeping our sanity and during any time of transition is remembering to be kind to yourself, right? We can be really tough on ourselves and focus on the things that we're not doing right and comparing ourselves to somebody else and what their situation is and why are they doing better than I am. And it's easy to get caught up in that. And so just whether it's writing in lipstick on your mirror or having some kind of visual reminders to be kind and loving to yourself through all things, but certainly during times of transition.
I love that. I love that you ended with be kind to yourself. Awesome. And then everyone, thank you so much for joining us tonight and being a part of this conversation. Like Abby said, we're definitely going to follow up with everyone with resources and materials that we've gathered on this call tonight. And Lanette will be reaching out to everyone with her PDF as well, which is amazing. And stay tuned. We're also going to be letting you know about the June webinar that is in the works that we're putting together and we're really excited about. So please join us again in June as we deliver that hot topic. And I think resiliency is like
nice.
the key. So love to hear it. So continue to throw your ideas in the chat, say hello to Lanette. And if you'd like to unmute, say hello, say goodbye, whatever you want to do, let's go out with a bang.
Woohoo! Thanks for being
Thank you. Great talk.
Yourselves, everyone.
Have a great
Thanks for being
weekend.
here.
Bye-bye.
You.